Before we continue the discussion with both Peter Fleischer, he's the Global Privacy Counselor from Google, and Susanne Eichhorn, in our working group, very well-known in-house lawyer at Deutsche Telekom AG, and also Mr. Kalber. I asked Peter Fleischer if he would be willing and have time to give a short impulse for the discussions on the panel in 10 minutes. Because for all of you who have been participating in the Bitkom Privacy Conference in the last years, Peter Fleischer is basically always here with us. And I'm very glad, Peter, that you agreed to join again. This year, I have to say, you have an amazing ceiling in your flat, and I think it's in Paris. It's gorgeous. That's absolutely excellent. So thank you for joining us again. Looking forward to your short impulse on the questions whether we do need a global approach on data protection and privacy, and maybe if technology can also build a bridge or be a way forward to achieve what we all want to see in the future functioning data protection environment. So Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rebecca. Can you hear me all right? Just lift your finger.
Perfect.
Excellent. Look, I'm delighted to be back at Bitkom once again. It's an honor to be part of this panel and also to follow Mr. Kadlov. Of course, we need a global framework to protect privacy. The internet is a global framework. Data flows internationally. People have recognized for a very long time that no one country, no one can achieve data protection by itself. I'll give you a little anecdote, and this anecdote goes back 15 years ago. The CEO of Google at the time, Eric Schmidt, and myself launched a series of op-eds in newspapers in the US and in Europe, calling for a United Nations charter for privacy. That is not as far-fetched as it might seem. As you know, the Council of Europe has already made a lot of progress in that area. The call for a United Nations charter, if you will, didn't actually work. But the world is well on the path to achieving privacy laws and privacy framework globally. It's not the way I thought we would get there, but we are getting there. At the time, there were just a few privacy laws in place. Europe, of course, was the center of it, but not many others. Now we have over 150 countries in the world that have privacy laws. Many of them, of course, modeled on the GDPR. And when I say we're getting to sort of common standards for privacy, I really need to say a few words about probably the most important international transfer arena of all, and that is Europe and the United States. As you know, the European Court of Justice had invalidated the Privacy Shield because of its concerns about US government surveillance. It did not invalidate it because of concerns about the privacy principles of the Privacy Shield. Now, the United States government and the negotiators who've been trying to come up with a new deal have informally, anyway, announced that we should expect an executive order from the White House soon that will put in place the restrictions on government surveillance that are specifically meant to address the concerns that have been articulated by the European Court of Justice. This has been called a negotiation between the United States and the European Commission, but it's not really a negotiation. Why? Only one party was really expected to do anything. The European Court of Justice said that it was up to the United States government to impose limits on its surveillance activities to address legitimate European privacy concerns. And I'm delighted to see that the United States government has stepped up to do that. So the process will take maybe 6 months or so until an adequacy finding is in place. Here's a little fact that I find interesting from Google's perspective on these issues. Even though the Privacy Shield was invalidated by the European Court of Justice, we have continued to do the work to certify to it, to apply the principles, and to do everything that we're required to do under those rules. Notwithstanding the fact that the agreement had been invalidated. Why did we continue to do that? Well, there are two reasons. One, we had made a public commitment to live up to those privacy principles. And that commitment is not just to our European users, it's also to our US users. And having made that public commitment, it was important that we would continue to do that, notwithstanding the concerns of the court regarding US government surveillance. The second reason is we were very confident, I've always been confident, that there would be a successor agreement to the Privacy Shield. And it's a lot easier to keep a compliance program running than to shut it down because it's been invalidated for unrelated reasons, and then try to start it all up again 2 years later. So we've been doing this all along, and we'll be ready to continue when Privacy Shield, let's call it 2.0, is in place. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, there is a lot of progress that continues to be made on international transfers and common privacy standards. I'll cite the cross-border privacy rules of the Asia-Pacific region. Google has also announced that we're signing up for it. It's a different model than the European model, but it's a model that the Asia-Pacific countries have decided is right for them. And as a private company, it's up to us to step up to those rules and to be a good player in privacy terms according to the rules that they've decided make sense for their region. Now, when I look at the US situation, there is a bill pending in Congress for US federal privacy legislation. It's further along than any privacy legislation had ever been in Congress at the federal level, against a background where numerous US individual states, such as California, have already passed stringent privacy laws. So what does all this mean for a company like Google? It is very hard for a company to try to comply with a blizzard of different inconsistent privacy laws. We're looking for one way to run our services to meet all of the different privacy laws and requirements that we're faced with. And that's why I'll suggest to you that we are also on the path to common global privacy standards, because private companies like Google have to find a way to run their services according to a global privacy standards, just for our own practical reasons. Now, there might be slight differences in individual legislation from country to country. Korea, for example, has passed laws requiring that privacy policy be in a particular font size. Well, that's Korean. Europe has famously passed a right to be forgotten that has been rejected in other parts of the world. So we apply that in Europe only. But most of what we do is run to one global privacy standard. And that's against the background of 150 countries in the world having privacy laws. And even if there are differences, the common denominator is close enough that it allows players like us to launch our services in a way that we're confident that we're meeting the common denominator of all of these things. It's no secret that common denominator is very closely aligned with Europe's GDPR. So I'll just stop there, having given a few ideas. I thought a few messages of the audio might not be so good, but anyway, best I can do.
I found it particularly interesting that you included the Asian Pacific dimension as well, showing that we're truly on the path to a global framework.